Hey everyone, thanks for joining us here today. I am going to put you all on mute when you join in here. Going to unmute our panelists so that they can chat, and we'll get started in just a minute. This is being recorded, and we will put this recording up to the St. Pete-Clearwater Film Commission YouTube channel after we get all this done. So I'm Tony Armour, Film Commissioner for St. Pete-Clearwater, Florida. And on the description link that you guys clicked on to RSVP for this, you should have seen the bios and sort of a little bit of everything about everybody. So we'll have everybody, kind of give a one-sentence quick intro of who they are so that we can kind of jump right into this since we've only got an hour. There is a chat function on Zoom here. So for the chat function, that's where we'll have you ask your questions that we'll do in the Q&A at the end of everything. So I'm gonna kick it off here to Dave Debord, who is our moderator. Dave Debord, longtime producer, film professor, education director for Sunscreen Film Festival. I'll let Dave take it, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you, and thanks everyone for showing up. I feel compelled. I have to say this, Todd Remus, I'm so glad you showed up. I almost asked you to be a panelist on this thing, but we got, we're just like, we already got a few, so we're like, we don't want to clutter it up. But, but man, I'm so glad that you're here. So, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but Todd Remus, at some point I may ask to have your mic unmuted and have you wax poetic. We'll see how it goes. But thank you, Todd, and thank you, Natasha and Ilan and everybody else who showed up. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Okay, so real quickly, and I'm just going to use my the visuals on my screen. I'm just going to use that to kind of go down each one. So I'm going to start with Marty Poole. The good news is, like with most of my panels, these are all friends. These are great people. Highly recommend them. And if you guys have more questions afterward, you can, contact Tony, who's hosting this, or contact me, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so let's start out. Marty, I think you and I knew each other when we first met, when I think Abraham Lincoln was giving his or something. It was somewhere back. We've known each other for a long time, but Marty, the best, there's so many things to describe you. I'm going to shut up and let you talk. I'll just say this one thing. The great thing about Marty is you are honest. Having said that, I kick it to Marty. Marty, a little bit about yourself, please, before we get into the questions. Okay.
Hey, Dave. Thanks, buddy. My old friend, for sure. You and Tony, appreciate you guys having me. Yeah, I try to be honest. That's why it's called Fairway Film Alliance. Fair way to do business. That's my company. Guys, I've been doing this a long time. As Dave said, quite a few years. I hate to say that, but it's true. Fairway is an independent production, distribution, sales company. My background goes way back to everything from international sales, acquisitions, just travel the world a lot, doing sales to the markets and things like that. And I started Fairway Film Alliance about 12 years ago. So been fairly successful with that. We're small, boutique independent company. So I work with filmmakers, always looking for completed films, and love to work with filmmakers that have visions and preferably also can, bring many titles to the table. I like building relationships and working with the same people over and over. I think that's very important. And then, as I said, on the side, we also, we produce films as well. So we're out there, probably a lot of us are smaller guys, and we're out there fighting every day to try to make quality films that are commercially viable. In my opinion, it's about making money at the end of the day. It is called the film business for a reason. Most investors and people that get in the business, there is that thing called profit that, that again, it's a moral thing to me that I try to get back for my filmmakers and do the best deals possible. So I work across the spectrum. That's in a nutshell.
Excellent. Victoria, hi. I saw you there. Nice seeing you. Okay, next up. Milan, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. You've done a lot of cool stuff. So just give us a broad whatever it is, and we'll go from there. So Milan Chakraborty.
Thanks for having me. I'll try to keep it short. I see a bunch of like familiar names, and they're tired of hearing this story. I just threw up my Twitter and my IMDb if you want to look. But generally, I was in production, finance, and accounting with Warner Brothers. Did films like Batman Begins and Superman Returns in my time, and then for the last 12 years, I've been in independent film with films like My Friend Dahmer, Assassination Nation, which was a big sale, Sundance 2018, and more recently movies like Plus One, which was at Tribeca last year, won the Audience Award, and a couple films in the circuit right now. One was going to premiere at Tribeca called The Dark and the Wicked from the horror master Brian Bertino, and the other film's called Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain, which is really timely, which Dave saw won the Audience and Narrative Award at the Austin Film Festival 2019, but is about unarmed black man being shot by the police in his own apartment in 2011. So, tough conversations that we're all having. So I'll leave it at that. We'll get to the other introductions and Q&A.
Yeah, the Kenneth movie, great movie, unique movie, interesting the way it was shot and compelling, even though it's a very confined world of the movie. You're right there, and you every second you're on it, and then it was just such a powerful and timely movie. Okay, Joanna, again, like everybody here, I've known you for a long time. We're good friends. You're a producer, distributor. Give us a little bit, just real quickly about how you came up in the industry and where you are now, and then we'll get cooking with the questions.
Same. I'll keep it real brief. I'm working distribution and marketing for a number of years at a few companies, and currently with a company called Briarcliff that's ramping up and working with a lot of independent filmmakers, and also an independent producer, working on a lot of stuff on my own on top of that. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Nice.
What she did not mention is she cut her teeth for many years at Lionsgate in theatrical distribution. So, all right, cool. So the first thing is, and actually we'll just start with you, Joanna. And guys, the way we do this, if you've never done any of the panels with Tony and myself, what we'll do is I'll ask some questions. The panelists at any time, like I'll probably address a particular panelist, but the other panelists are welcome to kick in at any time. And then after a while, after a couple of questions, we'll kick it to you guys. I'll read off the questions. They'll respond, and round we go. And if Todd Remus is up to it, we may unmute his mic for him to say something. Okay. So Joanna, let's start with you. You're working with it's Briar Patch, right?
Briarcliff.
Okay. So you're working with them. You're producing, but you're also doing a lot of distribution, and you just had this exciting article come out. Let's do this. Talk a little bit about that article, and then sort of expand on that and talk about, give me your State of the Union address, so to speak, on where you see distribution and how financing ties into that. But specifically, definitely distribution with Briar. And so anyway, so talk about the announcement, and then just kind of give me your thoughts on your State of the Union address as far as the current affairs of distribution and so on.
Definitely. So the announcement was Open Road, which had previously dismantled, is now relaunching in partnership with Briarcliff. And as far as indie, obviously being an independent filmmaker is really tough now. So it's another player in the indie market that hopefully will benefit a lot of independent filmmakers that are probably here on this call. What was the second part of? Where the state of where the
industry just kind of like where now you've had this big thing that's happened, you've been in distribution.
Yeah, it's like
where do you see it going?
It's an interesting time with everything. Shooting is changing, and how we're absorbing content is changing. As you guys probably heard about that announcement from Universal saying, "Oh wow, Trolls did so well online. Like we're just gonna do everything online day and date." Now AMC is saying, "Well, we're not gonna play your movies if you're going to go straight to streaming." So it's changing the marketplace. It probably was inevitable anyway, but it's just woken us up to the power of, not being there in person and what streaming can do So it's all good and bad. It's all about how you adapt to the new space. It's great for independent filmmakers because there's opportunities. I mean, streaming is picking up on acquiring content again. But theatrical, I'm not going to lie, is probably going to be tough. So if you make a film with, you know, a few C-list actors, that was under $1 million, I mean, I probably wouldn't be thinking about having a theatrical release anytime soon.
Could you also, Joanna, could you real quickly explain day and date and what that means?
Oh,
just,
sure.
Just so that they, yeah, just so that they
So day and date just means, well, in this context, day and date means releasing on the same date, just streaming platforms with your theatrical release. So you're releasing them day and date. They can also be referred to day and date, like domestic versus international. So something's opening in China the same day that it's opening in US. So they're opening day and date. So day and date just means the same date release for a film.
Yeah, excellent. All right, cool. Let's go to Milan. All right, so Milan, yeah, just a similar question. Give us a little bit of what you're working on now and where you see, you know, because you're a bit more involved, I think, with financing, raising money, and all that kind of thing than Joanna is. So maybe press into that a little bit. But of course, distribution's always, you know, involved and pushing back. So what are you working on right now, and where do you see things going from what you're doing and your efforts?
Yeah, trying not to drown like a lot of like a lot of people, but you know, obviously we're not going to be on film sets like anytime soon, especially for those of us that are producers. Just getting all the risks down is going to be very hard, and then getting all you know, safety is always paramount. So just you know, for me, I couldn't stand the fact if someone got hurt somehow, that would just weigh on my consciousness too much. So I've shifted thinking a lot about development, and I've gotten a little bit of development funds from an idea I kind of co-created, and another one from life rights I'm acquiring, which is a Korean adoption story. So spending time on development, kind of understanding what the future is going to look like, and in those scripts, not only obviously trying to make them good, but understanding that, like, if we were writing like January 2020 into a script, that's now a period piece, because every background, are they wearing a mask? Are they not wearing a mask? So, you know, creating stuff for what the future will look like, at least in the short term. When it comes to private equity, look, if you go just by the stock market isn't that far off where this started, which I think is a whole messed up. That's another conversation, you know, with 120,000 people dead and millions unemployed. The stock market didn't even blink. That's another problem. But that's not. So some would say is like there's just as much capital out there, because that who's playing in that game, high net worth individuals. But the thing is, with that uncertainty, no one knows what 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. I'm looking more towards going to the streamers and other bigger production entities saying, I've been talking about micro budget for the last 5 years. My scripts can actually be shot. And, you know, just in general, like, you know, that's COVID. But if we talk about like Black Lives Matter and just the more we're doing for diversity in film, you know, I don't have to do too much to change my slate. But I think, you know, with people that are on this call, I think we can kind of lead the way, like, because a lot of studios, a lot of different people realize their slates are super white. And if you come with well-developed projects, it's like, this is our chance to lead and kind of sneak in. So if you're not doing that, please start doing that. Because I especially for the short term, like I just don't think people are going to pick up the typical projects that they were picking up, because they're going to be playing catch up.
Yeah, and also the studios are doing these, you know, a lot of their content are these huge, you know, superhero or big action films, whereas, you know, to me, it seems like there's never been a better time or you know, a time for that to get into that space of different voices and diversity and, you know, that whole thing. And I think there are more opportunities now, you know, than there were even not that long ago. So, all right. So Marty.
Yes.
So Marty, yeah, same sort of thing. What are some of the things that you're actively doing, and especially with all the filmmakers that are zooming into this? You know, what might you possibly do for them, or how, you know, if they have a project, you could maybe describe that, and then just kind of tell us where you think the market's headed, what it's going to look like.
Okay. Well, as I said, guys, you know, I do worldwide sales at Fairway, so I'm always looking for filmmakers, projects that are ready to go to market, preferably, or in post-production, always willing to help, you know, help along, to look at a final cut, maybe help shepherd it. Because, you know, my goal is, I think we all have to get back a little bit. Not that I'm a saint, but, you know, I mean, I think we're all in this for a reason. It's got to be some passion behind it. That's why I've been doing it for many years. If there was anything that I was going to do to go just get rich, and not even taking in consideration the famous part, you know, I'd done something else a long time ago. So that's a cool part. You know, if you're passionate about this business, hopefully there's, you know, there's a way to find avenues to be successful. And I'm sorry, man, I'll start rambling here a bit, but, you know, I have a big suggestion always for filmmakers is, you know, if you've got this one passion project, you're going to spend years on it, that's great. But if you're, I don't know, like I'm in LA, I'm sure there's people maybe around the world on here, but if there's any chance to get involved in any other parts of the business, or, you know, I originally took an intern job for a sales thing, and I never wanted to do sales. I wanted to be a writer, actor, producer, but everything, it's osmosis. One thing gravitates to the other. So we are at a time where it's a bit difficult out there. So just, again, side suggestion, if there's any way you can be involved in the business and learn as much as you can, I highly suggest that, because usually one thing leads to the other. You know, as far as what we're doing, kind of the same as what Joanna and Milan were saying was, you know, I've in the process, we got three films that trying to get off the ground right now. And according to the virus, it's going to depend on, you know, COVID guidelines and all that of when we get started, because they were supposed to happen in July and then August, and now maybe September for one to go in Georgia, depending on if it opens up. So, I mean, it's stressful, you know, there's a lot going on, but we got to fight through that. And then, you know, as I said, I'm a small company, so there's like two of us, a business partner and a buddy of mine who helps with sales. And, you know, I do 8 or 10 jobs at one time. And because I also have 45, 50 films that we're representing. So, you know, there's always something that I can do. And that's the fight on the other side. On the sales side, with the films I have, I'm trying to find deals around the world. And it's difficult because of, again, kind of what Joanna, going back to what, you know, just the market's changed. It's not just the virus, it's changed across the board over the last few years with the decline of just, you know, DVD. No, you know, going back, there's no Blockbuster anymore. There, you know, you don't have to have a hard copy of anything. It's online, and you got to try to hit all those platforms, and you need to try to, again, suggestion is when you're putting a film together is to try to figure out your market first. You know, you want to work it back. What I try to do, what we try to do in producing is figure out where's this film, where's this certain project going to be at the end of the day, and work our way back to what's it going to cost to make that film, who's her cast, etc., and figure out, is that genre the right genre at the time? And these are all moving targets. But as a filmmaker, and again, being responsible to your investors or however you're putting that together, micro budget, like Milan said, you know, is the way to go. In my opinion, if you start making films over a couple $100,000 these days, I know that doesn't sound like a lot of money to some of you, it may sound like a lot, but selling a film without a cast in the right genre that just doesn't hit the mark is, it's really difficult to get sales. And until we come out of this virus thing it's going to continue. For my friends I'm talking to, and even the buyers, I'm not sure we're going to jump out of this with buyers actually, really putting money back on the table outside your big films for, maybe fall. We'll see. We're still in the middle of this. It's probably going to be 2 or 3 or 4 months. But the one upside on that, I think, is there's going to be some holes to fill. So any of you that have completed films out there, there's going to be that spot for the past few months where it's just been hiatus and people aren't shooting and films aren't being completed, that when buyers need product, and I hate to use the word, but again, it's product, that hopefully there will be some open holes out there in the US and around the world where buyers are like, I need a film. Do you have a genre film? Do you have a family film? We're looking for it. We need to place that. So hopefully I'm trying to keep some optimism on that side of it, that just keep the fight on that and finish up your films to the best of the ability and get them technically straight. You got to have a deliverable film across the board. You need great artwork. You need a great trailer. As producers, filmmakers, you've got to hand the distributor these days something that they want to see, because there's thousands of films still being made and television across the board out there.
Marty, we had a deal. You were going to be Mr. Sunshine this time, and Milan was going to play the heavy.
I was pretty good.
No, you were good. You were good. All right, Joanna. I have a question, and again, guys, we are going to get to your questions in just a moment. But I get to be selfish. I get to ask a couple of my own questions. So anyway, all right, Joanna, you are an expert in theatrical distribution. You worked for one of the big 7. Not only have you guided a lot of these things, but you've also visited a lot of the mom and pop, whatever branches and groups of theaters across America and all that. So here's my question for you. So give us, without like, oh, it's going to be a challenge, give us a little bit more, like, what are some of the actual challenges, and or where do you see theatrical going? What are can you project on what are some of the rules that are going to need to be followed for producers and expectations and all that? So just kind of take on theatrical for a moment and just sort of kind of give us an education.
Sure. So right now, from what I understand, movie theaters across the country, I believe, is like they're capping at 50 people per theater. So that really sucks for the big tentpole films. And everything just seems to be changing so quickly. Everyone says everything's going to reopen in July, and all of a sudden it's May and whatever. But I was on a call with NRG, which does a lot of like statistical analysis. They polled a ton of people. NRG is like a company that's run by a bunch of like Harvard graduates who are really smart, and they do all the statistical analysis. So they basically found in the research that patrons are falling in, aside from what the theater is allowed to do, it's also the issue of, do people actually want to go to the theaters? So they're falling in 3 categories, and they're pretty evenly split. The categories are called freedom first, safety first, and then health holdouts. So freedom first are about a third of the people who are like, I just cannot wait. I want my life back. I'm going back to the theater now. Like, when can we go? Then the next group is safety first, which means like they're kind of hesitant. They're kind of waiting around. Like, are the theaters going to follow proper measures? I might go back in a few months, but I'm going to wait for a little bit. I'm not 100% like ready. And then the health holdouts are the ones that are saying, I'm probably not going to go back to the theater for the next 6 months. I'm waiting for a vaccine. I'm not coming back. So it kind of, that analysis kind of tells us where the people are at in terms of, the whole theatrical space. So it's not just what the studios want to do, but it's also like we're monitoring what the people want to do. And so it could mean, we don't know until the theaters really open up. Like, first we'll find out after Mulan and Tenet open up in July to see like how a tentpole film does now in this landscape. But if you ask me personally, I think it probably might just equate to maybe less movies going theatrical, just because less people are going to the theaters. But in terms of shooting stuff, it's going to change a lot. I happen to know, they've been pitching Songbird by Michael Bay at Virtual Cannes, and I saw the promo. And so Michael Bay and a few producers got together and they wrote a script. They finished it on May 30th, and they wanted to make it about the pandemic, during the pandemic. They're casting it now, and I've had friends who've auditioned for it. They're saying that they're going to teach you how to shoot yourself in your home. And the movie's about if the pandemic, it's April 23rd, 2022, and the pandemic hasn't ended. We're in quarantine for 109 weeks. And all hell is going to break loose. Like, people just want their freedom back. Some people are like really pushed into isolation. And so it's going to be interesting to see how a major kind of Michael Bay level film does a film, you know, where the actors are shooting it on their own iPhones in their home. It's definitely changing the way people are shooting things. You just have to get creative. And I agree with Milan. I mean, the stuff that I make was already, we were already trying to do low budget with next to no people, and you know, wasn't never planning on doing big party scenes with a million extras anyway. So for us, a lot of us, it's you know, it's like cockroaches. You know, we're going to survive this thing because we're already making things on a micro budget anyway. But it'll be interesting to see how from top to bottom the kind of content that's made moving forward.
Very cool. All right. I have one more question, then I want to kick it to everyone. So this one is about financing, going after financing. So Milan, I want to have you take this one. And of course, anybody else that wants to talk about it. So Milan, you know, 2020, we're in one of the books of, one of the chapters of the book of Revelations. 2020 is bananas. But, you know, we're still trying to make product, and we're trying to get things lined up that will then, you know, be released in the future, etc. So one of your jobs as a producer is to find money. The worst part of the business, or it can be. So if you could kind of give us your state of the union on independent film financing right now, and also, if you can, maybe some strategies that these guys might be able to employ and use.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry.
There you go.
I thought you could unmute yourself, Milan, but trying. There you go. Sorry.
There you go. All right, you're all good.
I mute myself when I'm not talking, because when
it won't let you unmute because I have all the power.
Yeah. When I sarcastically laugh or depressingly laugh at other people, I don't want to like my screen to enlarge, so I mute myself.
Also, Milan, before you get into it, Todd Remus, I've sent you a private message, so just want to make you aware. Okay, Milan.
So, you know, I kind of touched on it earlier. I think private equity financing right now is very difficult unless you stick to your close, you know, circles of people that already know you, or if your story and subject matter and or your filmmaker is you know, in one of the groups that is and should be our highest priority, you know, whether it's Black, Indigenous, LGBTQ right now, especially in indie film. So I'm focusing on, you know, the future. So development. I mean, you know, crowdfunding, seed and spark, getting people to believe in you, which I'm not huge on crowdfunding, but desperate times, you know, go for it. You know, I think labs, really look into labs and grants opening up, especially for, you know, the various grants opening up for underserved, you know, communities and filmmakers. So it's tough to say. And then, you know, I do have some of the projects. I have my small ones, but I'm bringing up some of my big ones and saying, hey, Netflix, here's a 15 million, which isn't a 50 or 100, but then it's their health and safety becomes their problem. So I'm either going really small or really high, and I am focusing on, you know, comedy, horror, and faith and family. I think Marty touched on it. I just think that kind of low-key Sundance drama is going to be tough. And yes, if Michael Bay is tackling the pandemic, great. But I think for other people, that people aren't going to want to come back to this. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, we knew that. We don't want to go back to that. And short term. And I'm sure there's going to be exceptions to the rule. You don't need to come back and say what he said, but it's like we're already playing a game of being exceptions to the rule. So I try to position myself to give myself the best chance to succeed in any given climate. So I know that's not the easy answer, but I think, you know, I submitted a film to like Sundance Catalyst because they pre-vet these investors coming in. And I think Joanna mentioned, it's just like, hey, I made a film with my friends during pandemic. When it comes down to, great, that's content. But when it comes down to how are we going to curate this, it's still going to be most likely a star-based model unless you just start winning every film festival, which may be a virtual festival. And please embrace the regional virtual film festivals. Like, they are our lifeblood and vice versa. And they help so many filmmakers throughout. So, you know, obviously there's Sunscreen with Tony, and, you know, Oxford Film Festival did a great job in Mississippi, and Melanie, and Indie Memphis Sidewalk and Heartland's doing some things. They may not be virtual, but like, please look at Chattanooga Film Festival did a great job. Like, please look out for our whole ecosystem of indie film, and really reach out to each other. I need to do a better job of that too. It's like without knowing where the shore is, we don't know which way to swim right now. So it's like, that's why I love things like this, because it's like you don't feel so alone. I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, not LA or New York, or Cannes, like usual.
Hey, I've got two quick things. One is just as far as financing. So they have Legion M that in its last raise, I think they raised something like 10 or 12 $1 million, but they're doing it. And then I know I can just speak from personal experience. I was hired not that long ago, just a couple of months ago, to write a script, and I actually finished it last night. But for a company that actually is doing this similar model, but it's for family-friendly films called Hire Studios, and they've raised over $1 million, and so they're actually preparing to do their first feature. So, you know, so they're doing it. I don't know how much space there is for that kind of thing, but at least they're on the way to doing it. The second thing is, Tony, I'm calling an audible just this once, or maybe again, I don't know. But anyway, unmute Todd Remus if you wouldn't mind. I mean, look, Todd's awesome, and he's great in this space, and we've got him here, and he's agreed to speak for a second. So, Todd, are you there?
Hold on, I have to find him amongst all of
We got so many people.
the names and everything here. So, all right, there you go, Todd.
Yeah, thank you.
There you are. So, hey, Todd, real quickly. So, uh-oh.
Hey, Dave.
There you go. I hear you now.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So
I'm here.
Todd,
Yes.
yeah. So Todd, similar question about financing. I mean, you've financed, you know, a ton of indie films, even, and you've also, you know, you've gone into television now, but you know, obviously you're still doing indie films. Where do you see things right now as far as, you know, raising financing, and are there any strategies that you, in your experience, would say, hey, look, you may want to try this, but yeah, where do you see, you know, the state of things as far as independent film financing goes?
Yeah, look, first off, thank you for, you know, the call. And I wish we were all down in Florida talking about this at the Sunscreen Film Festival in person, but hopefully soon. But in the meantime, I would agree with pretty much everything everybody said on the phone, except Milan. We're going to have a discussion separately about the stock market. So the stock market is not back to where it was. You know, for those people that own cruise line stocks and are still 70% in the hole, they would argue with you. But anyway, that's a different discussion. Yes, in terms of the market, I would say, yes, it's diverging more than it's ever been in my, time in this business. And that is, you're either a have or a have not. And there's the middle ground is getting much, wider. So yes, if you have a A-list actor or B-list or whatever the right, category of actor of a bigger project that gets visibility, considering there's, so many of these streaming platforms and places that need content and are willing to pay for, so-called names, be it writer, director, actor, producer, whomever, you're in a good position. The films that I've been involved with by and large, which a lot of which I guess some of you guys have been involved with also, are some of these smaller ones that, sort of live and die by the festival world and the opportunity to get distribution through that. And I think it's, hard in two respects. One is there is no festival world anymore. So what does that mean if you made one of these films and you get accepted to a festival that's virtually, and you do or you don't play it, who knows? But then on the other hand, it's much more challenging to get the money for these films because the people that were investing in these films before are not in a position right now or don't have the interest in investing any longer. So I find it extremely challenging. And I think, I've had conversations in the past 2 days of films that were going to be made for $400,000 or $500,000. And now they're just of the opinion, how can we make this for any amount of money that we can actually raise? And then to Milan's point, obviously you need to be able to do this safely. So the other question is, timing. How can you raise money for a project that really you have no idea when it's going to be made and what the world may look like at that point in time, and what that means for other people that may be involved in the project that, may go elsewhere or do something else when the world, gets a little better. So yeah, it's an extremely challenging time. That said, if you're a writer, this is probably, heaven. You can sit and you can write lots of things that you wouldn't have had the time to do otherwise. But as the financing side, I think it's very challenging, but trying to keep plug away.
Totally
Hope
agree.
that answers your questions.
It did. Todd, you're awesome, man. Really appreciate it. Thank you for doing an
Anytime.
audible. Appreciate
I'm
it.
here. I'm here.
You look
Thanks.
great.
All right, so now I'm going to go to Q&A. And so the first one is my buddy Nathan Nazario. Given the current state of theatrical exhibition and the new reality of limited box office due to social distancing, which we were already talking about with Joanna, due to social distancing measures for the next 18 months, what are your suggestions for adjusting revenue waterfall models when presenting business plans to investors? Any examples or recommendations you can share using comps for the past few years in a pre-COVID world is based on a potential of 100% capacity, and that's not the case now. So any examples or recommendations you could share? How should we adjust the financial waterfall? Unless somebody else wants to jump in, I'm going to kick this to Milan, if that's cool.
Oh, this may be the doom and gloom. Assume theatrical is zero. But if you want to, unless you have some of those other elements, you got to be. The good thing is, if theater seats go to 50, if they do start opening it up, that could be great. Actually, if you look at the amount of empty seats, even when the Thors come out, it's horrible, especially if you're not looking at Friday and Saturday. So, but look, my friends that did The Wretched, they're the ones that exploded. They ended up being the #1 film in America for 6 weeks because IFC timed it right, and they ended up on Good Morning America. So, being creative, four-walling, what we did with our movie Where Hope Grows, which was the first movie with a national release to star a person with Down syndrome, because we went out and sought out the Down syndrome advocacy community, and people were buying out theaters. So four-walling and knowing your audience before you start. Well, that's always my advice pre-COVID or during COVID. We were able to do 1.2 million in the box office, which just doesn't happen to most of the Sundance films. So going to those kind of advocacy groups, or who can support, the theatrical experience needs to be more than just the current theatrical experience. Why are they going to that theater to see your film? So I know that's not a fun thing to say, assume your number is zero, but the reality is, for most of the time, I make my number for international, I make it zero, but I adjust my budget accordingly where I think we have a good shot at doing domestic, and international is just gravy. So unless you have those special elements of director and cast or genre, there's, especially for the next year, because now all the studios are sitting on big content, and they're going to put 50 million, 100 million into their marketing. Where are the screens and the seats for indie film?
Yeah, good. All right, I've got another one. This one's for Marty. And it's I'm making it for Marty. She didn't specifically say, but I think Marty, you're the perfect person for this. So it's from my friend Victoria Jorgensen, who's happens to be a very talented director. Do you think, Victoria said, do you think A-list actors, or Victoria, if you don't mind me riffing, can we even expand it beyond, like, how about bankable? Whether they're A-list or not, like bankable, where money, right? Money actors. Okay. A-list or money actors, bankable actors will be more open to micro-budget films just to exercise their craft while the studios are still silent or things are really slow. I'm so glad she said that to me, because I think so. But Marty, you swim in this all day long. You're talking to buyers domestic and literally all over planet Earth. Please answer that. What's your guess?
That's a great question. Thanks, Victoria. Yeah, Dave, I tend to hopefully agree, that you would think. I mean, I don't know, guys. I think we all think this. How come we're shut down right now and there wouldn't be actors out there that are willing to work, may need to work, would like to have some money because they don't. But, I mean, I think we're talking different levels here. The AA list, they're not going to do small films without the payday, and they don't have to. They got money in the bank, and plus, their agent's not going to let them do it. And that's the other. I don't know how many attorneys or agents are on this. I hope I don't offend anybody, but my goodness, it's dealing with that. Just casting this last film, I was talking about going in Georgia. I've got 2 nice names on there. They're not top AA, but they're good for my sales. It helped me get my MG in place, and I got my worldwide deal in place and the financing through it. But it's going through and dealing with, getting a casting director. I think that helps. I also recommend that, if you got a project, bring somebody on that can cast the film, let them get out there. And you can usually do that maybe for nothing or very little money. And if they have the ties, then they're going to know the agents and the managers. And at least if it's good enough project, get it read. And I think you have to start there. You get that in place. And then, yes, if hopefully there's talent out there that's bankable, sellable, that says, I love this project. And one of our actors on this one just happened at first, they turned us down, and they came back and said, I really like this project. And then we went through the attorney stuff and, the agreements. Again, I'm sure some of you have done it. Some of you may not yet, but it's the producing part. It's not easy. It's hard work every day, and it's pulling teeth. But I hope and pray that some of these actors who were usually maybe getting those bigger roles and the bigger paydays are finding out from just the things we're talking about. There may not be as many studio films made. Budgets have got to come down if the revenues are there. So hopefully eventually it will kind of even out, and you're going to be able to access some bigger actors either because they love the project or they will at least fit into your price range that you can pay them. And maybe the agents and managers will start realizing that as well.
Cool. All right, so question from, and then I'm just taking this randomly because I know we're going to run out of time. BD Ganell, question is, do you think that the reduced capacity in theaters could push exhibitors to lengthen their time? With the battle over day and date, it feels like a potential for a standoff. Joanna?
Yeah, you want me to take that one?
Yeah.
So it really, I mean, it's I assume this person is talking about keeping their film in the theater longer, and it kind of depends on where they feel the money's going to come back. So basically, after every weekend, all the data from their movie theaters all over the country comes through, and they can see how much money each movie made. So if your movie isn't grossing the same as the Christopher Nolan film, they're going to want to replace your film with another film that's going to make them money. It's all about money at the end of the day. So, they can't just keep it on there for no reason, because they also have people they report to who are going to be like, why are you keeping this on screen and it's not making any money? Get that other film that, try that one. So it really just comes down to how good the film is and how it's generating profit compared to relative to the other films that are out there in the marketplace.
Joanna, it depends on how good it is, but also isn't there, on the flip side for the studio, isn't there a little bit of like, yeah, but they're hemorrhaging money, so maybe they need to do you think they'll flex at all, or do you think it's just, it's the onus is, on the producer and even the exhibitor, not so much on the studio? I mean, do you think they'll blink a little bit?
Oh yeah, I mean they're always going to,
Okay.
but if Universal's film is in its 10th, or I guess Fox is in its, or Disney I should say, because Fox is not around and Universal's streaming everything now. Let's say Disney's film is in its 10th week and it's the bottom of the complex, it's grossing the least. I mean, it just needs to go. There's still what's the word, a lifeline for these films. They can't go on forever, and so the ones that generate more money can stay in a little longer. But even like a typical indie film, usually like an AMC would probably last like 2 weeks anyway, like without the pandemic. So it's the ones that break out that you can probably get a few more weeks out of it. But if there's nothing to put on the screen, then maybe. But I think the last time I checked, there's not a shortage of content to try.
So you're not to wrap that up, you're not seeing a lot of flexibility so much from the studios. It's going to be more on all the rest of us to be flexible.
Yeah, like you got to come out. You got to go to the
usual.
Buy a ticket.
Yeah. All right. Sean Dawes has a question. Thank you, Joanna. Sean Dawes has a question. What are your thoughts on using virtual sets, Unreal Engine, to tell stories as we move forward with storytelling and keeping costs down? I don't know who to kick that to. Who'd like to take that?
You know what? I can speak to that a little bit, oddly enough. So I think what you're talking a little bit about, Sean, is anybody who's watched The Mandalorian and maybe seen some of the behind the scenes on what The Mandalorian has done with their sets, where they've got a 75-foot LED wall where they can do these virtual backgrounds and they film it real time. So there's no green screen and having composite later on or anything like that. It's literally all there, and they use a video game engine for the camera movement so that the background moves so it all matches up. And there's a company here in Clearwater, Florida, I've been talking to that does LED stuff, and I'm already in conversations with them about what can we do to build an LED wall set here in the Clearwater area to bring these types of productions. And so there's a couple things you got to consider. One is cost. Are you actually going to save any money? Because how many people can afford to have a giant LED wall as part of soundstage when you're shooting? There's not a lot of sub-$1 million films that are necessarily going to be able to afford that. I think for the time being, that still is going to be in the in the wheelhouse of larger budgeted projects. Now, if you can find a way to do that on a smaller scale for some indie projects, let's say you've got a small LED wall, or even really large LED TVs, and you're setting up a cockpit kind of a setup and you're having people fly through space. You could do that now with no budget and film that kind of stuff. And it can look phenomenal, because I've seen some tests of that kind of stuff. So I think it really depends on what you're talking about and what budget range you're talking about. But I'm actually kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit there, but it's a little something I'm working on here in Clearwater to kind of create something with these virtual LED wall sets.
You know who's another good company that you may want to look at as well, and you've met these guys, is Sean and David Smith, who do Driving Plates and Third Law Productions.
Yes.
They're already sort of living in that reality. So anyway, all right, next one. Forgive me, I'm probably going to say your first name incorrectly, so I apologize. Cantona Thomas? I hope I said it right. Here's this question. I've been in talks with a company out of LA. They keep mentioning that there is an opportunity with SBA 7A loans for indie films. Have any of the panelists had any experience with these? This feels like a Milan question. Milan, am I wrong, or do you know anything about this?
Yeah, I don't know like the legal or the government name for it. I have been looking into recently under the under the CARES Act, the old, we used to call it Section 181, which was, you know, investment in a film. You could write it off in the year that the expenses, that you made the investment. Then it was gone for a couple years. Then they changed it to you can write it off in the year the film comes out. I saw something about the CARES Act, and they're like, based on investment in film, you can write off against losses for the previous 5 years. So I'm not sure if that's also SBA, but something within the CARES Act. I'm having a couple accountants look at it, just because I am a former CPA, but that was 12 years ago, but I passed the test 20 years ago. I don't give tax or legal advice, but there are professionals. Definitely look into it, because much like with Section 181, when I would approach investors, I'm like, don't even look at this as a film investment. Look at it as a tax write-off. And it's a different way of thinking, because it's just a tax saving strategy. So please look into it. If you figure it out, like, share it, and I'll do the same. Share it with the whole indie film community, because if we can change the perception of what this is, if people can write off their gains and or previous year losses, now investors aren't really investing in your film. And you know, same thing at looking for, you know, if you have a cause base in your film, finding a fiscal sponsor where now the film is a write-off, and you're not talking about these crazy comparables and numbers you can't rely on. So I don't know if that SBA 70A or whatever is the same within the CARES Act, but it's definitely something to look into, because it could be a lifeblood. Can I tackle the stars doing your film question? I thought that was a great question, and I think especially for a group like this, I do think they'll do it, but don't forget about agents and managers. They will get in the way. But I got a pretty big above the title star reached out to me, him and his people. He's like, I got this big property in Austin, Texas, and I want to do this. So I think they're gonna self-create, much like John Krasinski did with that good, you know, Some Good News. So much like a lot of it comes down to connection. So part of this will be very realistic. Part of this will be very self-serving. But it's like, make sure someone on your team, if it's not me, if it's not Joanna, if it's not Marty, like someone on your team has been through the process before, from a very early part in your process, and pay them. Like, it will save you so much money in the long run, and you actually have a chance of distributing your film. Somebody to walk you through the film festival circuit and the distribution cycle. If you don't have that from a very, very early stage, your chances right now, yes, they're going to need more content, but it's curating it. And they're not going to need that content for another 6 to 9 months. There's so much stuff that's still in post. We're South by, Tribeca, all those film festivals, we're going to have stuff. When people are talking about, oh, they're not desperate for content. Like, yes, if this thing goes till 2022, they'll be desperate. But at that point, I'm driving for FedEx anyway.
That was great. All right. So we're going to get to Marley Roberts' question real quickly, though. Since you brought up the 181, I feel like I need to do a quick speed version of what, you know, of just like what the state of that is right now. So real quickly, the 181 was a federal, you know, incentive that you could use for TV, film, and Broadway. And then it went away at the end. It expired at the end of 2017. But then Congress voted in a new one called the 164K. Very similar. It was, the 181 was you could write off, you know, your depreciation on that money in the year that you invested it. The 164K, which is still active, is the year that the movie or the Broadway show goes into distribution. That's the year that you can write it off. But one huge parenthetical is the federal government brought the 181 back for this year. So right now in 2020, I believe it's part of the CARES Act. So and whatever it is, it's back for this year only. So for those of you who've heard about the 181, or maybe you've used the 181, it's available only, you know, like they brought it back for 1 year this year. So look into it, look into the 164K, see which one works. But at the end of the day, if you're not using those tools, you just don't, you're giving away money. It's just going to help mitigate risk. Okay, Marley,
Dave, real quick before you hop into Marley's question.
Yeah.
We keep
I
putting Marley.
lost it. Go ahead.
It's in there. It's in there.
I got it. I found it.
So I did want to answer the SBA question because that was something that came up a little while ago with an independent filmmaker I know as well, who was looking at getting one of these the CARES Act SBA loans for $150,000, and he asked an entertainment attorney if he could invest this in a film, and the entertainment attorney told him it was a horrible idea. And don't do it because you could get in a lot of trouble, and it's not the way that that particular one was designed. So I'm not giving legal advice, and I'm not saying what the other attorney necessarily said, but you should ask an entertainment attorney about your small business loan before you go out and spend it on a movie to make sure you don't get yourself in trouble. So now, hop on to Marley.
And we've got some good recommendations, but we won't do it publicly. Okay. All right, Marley, question. Do you calculate projections on your own, hire out a consultant, or use a sales agent to get estimates? Which data do you rely on, as box office numbers may not be as relevant now, obviously? And how many films do you use in your comparable analysis? That's a really, you're right, that's a really great question. When you're creating your pitch deck, how many comparables should you put in? Where do you get the data and all that? So who wants to tackle that?
And the sales estimates, I think that's a big part of that question too. Where do
yeah. I mean, as you're creating I'm assuming like what Marley didn't use the words pitch deck, but I'm assuming like you're talking about an investment document, to raise money and all that. So
yeah, should never. I would never. Again, that's what I do. Sales. You would never create your own estimates because you have no idea in Hades what your film's going to do unless you're in the side of the business. It's not being a smart ass. It's just, I would never recommend that. Your pitch deck is one thing. Your comparable film, blah, 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 meets blah, blah. That's fine. And that could be creative along with your script and your potential cast and stuff like that. But I would never say you need to go to a distributor or sales agent and to get those numbers. And that's something we calculate. Really, you can't calculate those until you have those other things in place. You can't just randomly. You need to know who your cast is. Again, if you want to do it honestly and not BS your investors before you take their money. So you need that cast in place, and then you got to go out to the buyers, or we just know per territory, depending on cast level, again, the genre of the film, etc. And it's a guesstimate, guys. Estimates are guesstimates these days. And I can put in there $500,000 to $5 million, or $50,000 to $2.5 million. It all depends, and at the end of the day, it depends. Unless you're doing pre-sales, which again is a very difficult market. We're doing a film right now that we're working on pre-sales with our company for the Cannes Virtual, and then those have to come into play. But without a huge cast, director, etc., those are not the easiest things to do. But I would state before you get numbers, and you really, again, if you're going to be responsible to your investor, is get all the toys in the playpen and make sure they all work together, and then it's much more viable to potentially have at least a semi-sound model that you can say, this is my highs, these are my takes, my minimums, my ask and my minimums, and again, that's just language we use. But I would never do it yourself. I think you would potentially get yourself in a lot of trouble.
All right. No, Marty, that's great. And I'm going to use that as your final word, Marty, because we're almost out of time. So now we'll just have the other two give us some parting wisdom, Milan, and then we'll have Joanna bring us home. So Milan, bits of wisdom can you share with us?
Look, I'm glad everybody's on this call. We're all one community, one ecosystem, and do whatever you can to protect that. So that's not just in filmmaking. Like right now, don't just watch stuff on Netflix. Buy those indies and rent those indies on Amazon, iTunes. From a lot of those virtual film festivals are doing rentals. Like we all have to do everything we can to protect our ecosystem, not just as filmmakers, but as as people, and more importantly, I know I've said it almost every time I've spoken, but you know, if you're not making stories right now, especially in the indie space, about, you know, raising the profile and the voices that have been historically underrepresented in our films, yeah, it's bad. It's not only most likely ineffective filmmaking, but it's like, this is like, not only good morals are also good business, and I think that's going to stand. I do think that's indie films' advantage. We can move a lot faster. We can change direction and move a lot faster towards, you know, progress than the studios can. They have to unwind and unpack a lot of history, a lot of bad data. Like, all their numbers are based on historical data that, just like Marley's question, hey Marley, like, it's like those numbers don't work anymore. The industry and the world is different. But yeah, we're all in this together. Do whatever you can to lift. Well, first, work on yourself. I'm trying my best here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and then look out for each other too.
Excellent. Joanna?
Marty said, quit now. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, Joanna's the heavy.
Yeah.
All right.
FedEx is hiring drivers.
No, I'm just kidding. I agree with everybody who's spoken today. And when you just pay somebody to do something right for you, you know, if you don't know how to do it, it's unfortunate. It is a rich person's hobby. You know, it's not like singing where you can just do it in the shower and kind of record something. I mean, all the elements need to be in place, everything from production to pre-production to casting to finding a distributor and what have you. But at the same time, stay hungry and aggressive. You know, I own up to when I don't know things and I can't predict how this world is going to work and do estimates based off this new world. We don't know. So keep asking questions, just like today. You know, someone asked a question and Tony knew the answer and jumped in and had something to say. We all know different things and can contribute in different ways. And like Milan's saying, this ecosystem. So every single person here knows something that someone else doesn't know, that I don't know. And it's just keep at it. It's this industry is endurance and grit, and all we can do is support each other and educate each other so we can be better.
And next time we do one of these at the Sunscreen Film Festival in Florida, which is coming up at the end of September, should society and civilization still be around, we'll talk about streamers on that one, since we really didn't get to them very much today. So thanks for everyone. Tony, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, thanks everybody for zooming in here today. So we've recorded this entire panel, and we're going to put this on the St. Pete-Clearwater Film Commission YouTube channel. So you'll be able to come back, and we'll send an email out and put on our social media when we have it up. This panel, along with our diversity in film panel that we did just before this one, will both be up there. So you can rewatch, you can share with friends, family, enemies, whoever you want to make watch it. But thanks everybody.
We have great panels at Sunscreen Film Festival Florida, right?
Yeah, so September 24th to 27th, all things being right in the world, we'll have an actual film festival, people to come and attend and watch some independent films. So thank you all very much. I'm going to close it all down now, and we will see you virtually sometime soon.